The video is terrifying. It was just a matter of seconds.
He was literally like 1 second from going inside.
Video that shows a group of robbery suspects forcing a homeowner to unlock his front door at gunpoint. Police say the North Carolina homeowner was approached by 5 armed men as he was returning home. One of the robbers hit the victim on the head with a gun. Money, a cell phone, and unspecified drugs were taken from the home. Police are using this video to help find the robber.
Police have now released some new video of a violent carjacking that took place Monday night. The surveillance video shows 2 men walking on the 2600 block of Kensington Avenue in Kensington. And this is when you see the man pull a woman out of the passenger car in the seat there, and then they threw her to the ground. One man takes off and the other hops into the driver's seat. Meantime, the woman gets back in and tries to stop him. He reverses and she falls out of the vehicle again. He puts the car into drive and takes off. If you have any information about this carjacking, call police.
I wanted to see if I can make this short video. Public service announcement. I get the impression that black people don't care about their Second Amendment rights. It's not even an impression. We don't. As a collective, we don't really care about our Second Amendment rights, which I find quite ironic, be it the fact that during the Donald Trump presidency, black people went out there and bought more firearms than black people have ever bought. Black people were the number one group in terms of new purchasers of firearms. And I always question this attitude that we have towards the Second Amendment, where many of us who decide to engage in the right, in the Second Amendment, engage in the right, many of us don't feel the need to defend the right. Now some people argue that black people have a kind of like have what you need, like we don't care what the laws are, like as long as we got what we need, like we don't care. And I take issue with that because, there is in my opinion, a generational selfishness where, you only worry about yourself, you only preserve the right, or you exercise the right for yourself, but you don't preserve it for future generations. And it doesn't seem like black people care about that, right? Because I don't know if you know, and I'll put the link in the description box. Armed Scholar put out a video the other day talking about how Joe Biden basically wants to be a part of this new session of the Supreme Court that's going to be addressing the Second Amendment. There's many cases that the Supreme Court could look at. Some of the cases are redundant, but one of the main cases is a New York case. It's brought up by the New York Rifle and Pistol Club against this, the state of New York or the city of New York, that talks about this whole justifiable need in order to be able to carry a firearm outside of the home. Now, the irony for like black people is the fact that justifiable need and good cause were put into place, many of which were put into place around 1968 during the whole civil rights movement and all that stuff. They were put into place around that time and after that time, which basically was designed to deny black people access to firearms. That 1968, if you're a convicted felon, you can't possess a firearm. That was directly targeted at black people. The Mulford Act, directly targeted at black people. And see, this is where, I look at many white Americans like they're stupid and foolish because, and this, speaks to white supremacy where, again, black people are the canaries in the coal mine. White people always go out here and they co-sign these laws coming from the white oligarchy, believing that they're specifically targeted at black people and that they're only going to be exercised against black people and then not later used against white people. But that's precisely what's happened, right? Because it's not black people that have basically brought this lawsuit, up against the city of New York. It's white people. It's white people who want to carry their guns outside the home and step outside the home, okay, with their firearms. It's not black people, even though the laws were originally designed to keep firearms out of the hands of black people, right? But now you have Joe Biden's administration that basically wants to argue on the behalf of America that you do not have a right outside the home. They basically made an appeal to the Supreme Court saying under such and such a rule, the United States of America, that being, Joe Biden's administration, wants to argue that you do not have there is no constitutional right to carry a firearm outside of the home. So basically, and they're going to put this all underneath, public safety, right? Which doesn't make any sense. And I'm going to get into that in a second. Because it's not like we have some epidemic of card-carrying, CCW holder, licensed firearms, law-abiding citizens that are out here contributing to gun violence and gun crime, right? But they want to try to make it seem like, people going through the very background checks that the liberals say that people should go through that are so vital to preventing gun crime is now insufficient to prevent gun crimes from happening, as though, again, it's the law-abiding, card-carrying, CCW-holding people that are committing the acts of gun violence in cities like New York and all across, the Northeast especially. Okay? So that's like the pure irony. I kind of went ahead of myself, but that's like the pure irony of the whole situation. I'm like, I thought you wanted everybody to go through background checks. Now they go through background checks, and now you're arguing, well, they shouldn't have guns outside the home because, that increases danger. And I'm like, but I thought you made the argument that background checks were what was needed, universal background checks. That's what's needed in order to prevent gun violence, right? So anyway, Joe Biden's administration wants to go up there and argue that you do not have a right to carry a firearm outside the home. And black people should be up in arms because this directly affects black people. Because black people are the ones that live in high crime areas. Black people are the ones that find themselves, at the barrel's end of illegal firearms, right? A lot of white people, they live way out in the boonies. They live way out in the suburbs, right? So they have an economic barrier that separates them from the criminal elements. Right. That's why, in part, when they see crime, because, crime and poverty are connected. But when they see crime, they see black faces. When we see crime, we see black faces. But oftentimes those criminals are criminals that are in the neighborhoods in which we live. So if anybody's going to get into an armed confrontation with a criminal, it's going to be us. Right. It's going to be black people. But yet somehow we don't embrace, the Second Amendment. It was cool over here just a minute ago. Now I'm over here and I'm all hot. But anyway, I don't get the sense that black people care about the Second Amendment like we should. Joe Biden is about to go up there. This is the man that the overwhelming majority of black people voted for. I hate when that happens. This is the person that the majority of black people went out here and voted for. And he's going to go up there and argue that you don't have a right to carry a firearm outside your home, even if you go through the background checks, even if you get your CCW. They don't have to give it to you. You need justifiable need and good cause, which basically means you have to have somebody threaten you, or you have to be a victim of a crime, or have some sort of stalker first before. So you got to survive the first criminal, act against you in order to be able to justifiably get it a second time. You have to have above and beyond, some sort of, fear for your life. Again, the goal is not really about that. The goal is simply to deny, especially African Americans, access to a firearm. Because please believe, the way that the U.S. government and many elements of the system of white supremacy look at, black people when it comes to firearms is, we's the pose. We's the pose. They don't want to arm the pose. You know what I'm saying? We po. So they don't want to arm us. Which leads me to the next issue that's going to come up, because the reason why New York and the U.S. government is freaking out about this is because the Supreme Court typically doesn't look at cases unless they're going to vote in the opposite direction. Okay? And they're going to deal with the whole issue once and for all. I already talked about this 10 years ago with Chicago. I'm like, how is it that you force Chicago to recognize CCW, and carrying a firearm outside the home? You force DC to do it, but then you don't force New Jersey or California or New York. So you got so all these blue enclaves are just continuing to violate people's Second Amendment rights by denying them the ability to protect themselves outside the home, the area where you're most likely to be attacked. Most carjackings don't happen in your driveway. Most carjackings happen while you're driving. Okay, so anyway, let me not get too excited. I'm saying that what's going to end up happening, and this is where black people, all these NAACP, all these black woke people that like to sit up and have little seminars and panels about African American this and that and the third, right? Which I already know is not going to happen. That's why I'm mocking them. But they need to be the ones that have the lawsuits ready, because let me tell you what's going to happen. The Supreme Court, in my opinion, is going to vote against New York. That's going to set the standard for the entire country that as long as you are not a prohibited person, that you can lawfully possess a firearm outside the home, arguing that you have a CCW and all that. You can carry concealed. Now, I'm a big proponent of carry concealed. I'm not a big proponent of open carry. I think it's tactically foolish. That's a whole different conversation. But what the left is going to do, mind you, the left, not the right, the left, because they don't want black people with guns. What the left is going to do is the left is going to start putting in a whole bunch of hoops to jump through that are going to be cost prohibitive and have essentially the same effect as denying black people access to firearms as it is now. So the fees are going to go up. John Locke, having an interview with Colion Noir, just talked about this. When you look at Chicago, there was another video on YouTube where a white woman brought that up about these exorbitant fees. It's like $600 to get a permit, right? If you got black people who live in high crime areas, they don't have $600 of disposable income to spend on a permit. And essentially all you have is effectively, you might as well just say white people can have guns and black people can't. And I don't know why the NAACP, the Nation of Islam, whatever any other black organization you want to talk about, why they don't speak up on this issue. If white supremacy comes through and says black people can't have guns, all of a sudden Al Sharpton and everybody else comes out the woodwork. That's racist. But as soon as they make it cost prohibitive, which essentially is the same thing because of the economic disparities that this country has always had between white people and black people, somehow that's okay. The upper middle class white folks living in the suburbs, they can afford to get a $600 permit, which is essentially what you see in Chicago, which is the disproportionate amount of white suburban people who don't live in the confines of Chicago. They got their permits and everything that they need, but the people that live in the high crime areas, the law-abiding people, don't. So they're just victims to crime. And yet, no Black Voices speaks on this. The other thing that they're going to do is, just all type of, I can imagine the retarded requirements. Oh, you must have 60 hours at a range with an NRA instructor, ironically, an NRA instructor that we approve of. Right? They're going to, and then not only that, you got to pay for that. You got to pay for the ammunition. It's not going to be like some other states that you go into and it's a $5 fee and you do a written test or whatever, or you do a live range firing and then you get your permit. No, it's going to be all type of, you got to have the same training as a law enforcement officer. Ridiculousness. The irony is, again, when it comes to the, notice how, like, when it comes to the mass shooters, we got to deny them AR-15s because in the hands of a mass shooter, they are the deadliest weapon on earth with laser precision headshots all over the place, right? Let them tell it. Even though Joe Biden will go up there and say, get a shotgun because the AR-15 is harder to use, harder to shoot, harder to aim. But yet somehow when in the hands of, one of these deranged white male mass shooters, all of a sudden it makes him a super lethal ultra killer, right? But yet in order to be proficient with any firearm at all, oh no, you must have super ultra extensive training. Why? The mass shooters that you just said are super ultra lethal killers when they have their AR-15s or whatever gun that they're illegally possessing and illegally using, or sometimes even legally. You know what I'm saying? You guys go up there and act like, oh, they're these super ultra lethal killers. So it sounds to me, so it's like, well, what is it? Is it can a person be lethal with a firearm or not lethal with a firearm? Do they need training in order to be lethal with a firearm? We all know the answer to that. The answer is no. And then here's the more ridiculous part, right? So they'll probably make everybody go through all of these, hoops in order to get your CCW permit in states like New York and states like New Jersey. Exorbitant fees, just like they have now. I mean, think about it. They don't even issue it. It's May issue in New York, and they don't issue permits. You can spend upwards of $500 to try to get a permit, and then they still deny you, and they don't give you your money back. They just say, oh, well, we didn't like your reason. Boom, thank you for your donation. That's how it goes down. Now, the part that really gets me is like, so the left will sit there and they'll say, oh, it's all about safety and, we must have safety and people need to have training. Okay, fine. I'm not against training. People must have training. But again, this is where they can slap on those exorbitant fees to make it cost prohibitive to deny, especially African Americans, from exercising their rights just like everybody else. But what they'll do is they'll do things like what New Jersey's trying to do right now. We want fees on ammunition. So let me get this right. You want people to be trained with a firearm so that they're proficient with the firearm, but then you want to put taxes on the ammunition, which is going to have a direct result as to whether they go to the range or not and train and not only become proficient, but maintain that proficiency over time. So again, you start getting into we don't want people exercising their rights. So how do we do that? We'll just throw fees on it and make the cost of gun ownership expensive, make the exercise of carrying a firearm outside the home expensive, make even practicing and shooting a firearm expensive, which totally goes against safety, because you would think that if you're going to have people walking around with loaded firearms, that you would want them to be as proficient as possible. That's the initial argument, right? That we want these people to be proficient. But then you put taxes on the ammunition so that They train less. So instead of ammunition costing, let's go pre-COVID prices, $200 for 1,000 rounds of 9mm, now you got to pay, $300-$400 for the same ammunition because of some arbitrary tax that they want to slap on top of it. The goal is to prevent people from having the exercising those rights, period. It's not about, we're cool with people exercising those rights as long as they're proficient. That's not the argument that the left is making. The argument that the left is making is that they don't want you to exercise that right, period. And if they have to bend at the knee and to the Supreme Court, if they absolutely have to do that, then they're going to just approach it from the back doorway and then say, okay, fine. Well, we don't want these people, those people having firearms, and we know that they're disproportionately poor because of the historical context of the system of white supremacy. So we will just throw fees on top of it. And the end result will be that, yes, we regrettably will have people walking around the state of New Jersey with their CCWs, but thank goodness the overwhelming majority of them will be Caucasian. And the same thing will be in New York, and the same thing will be in California. You see, because they love to, to criminalize black people. No doubt, the black community has a criminal element. And a disproportionate criminal element, again, due to the historical context of racism and white supremacy and redlining and blockbusting and eminent domain and urban renewal and dumping of drugs in the black community and job discrimination and housing discrimination and all of the above. I know white people don't like to factor all that shit in there, but all of the above. So yeah, we do have that problem, which, unfortunately, when I know a lot of black people want to focus on white supremacy and racism and everything else, but the fact of the matter remains is that we have a large segment of the criminal element in our community, that endangers us first before we can go over there and get to, racism and white supremacy and all that other stuff. We got people in our own communities that will carjack us and rob us because, they're struggling or they're, down and out. I'm not trying to make too many excuses for them, but it's the reality of poverty. Where there is poverty, there is crime. So, I'm expressing this to get black people to understand why you need to take your Second Amendment rights seriously. What Joe Biden is going up there and doing and trying to, argue, that nobody has the right to carry a firearm outside the home, all that does is prevent you from carrying a firearm outside the home. That's not stopping Pookie. Pookie gonna do what Pookie gonna do. If Pookie's gonna carjack you, do you think Pookie really cares about what the laws are during the commission of a crime and the fact that he's got an illegally possessed firearm that he stole from somebody else, or that his gun has 30 more rounds than yours does? Do you think he actually cares if he's going to go to the lengths to commit the crime of carjacking? No, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about what the laws are. There's no law that can be passed that's going to make him to prevent him from not committing that crime that he's committing out of desperation or just plain savagery. So when the liberals come through and they pass all these laws, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't have that, all that does is prevent you from being able to protect yourself in the high crime environment in which you live, be it the fact that America is so demographically segregated. Not to mention the fact that the other, you could argue unintentional, but I would argue intentional results are people getting caught up in the system. People who the laws are so, there's so many laws on the books that somebody who's not a prohibited person, doesn't have an avenue. Like example, like New York, you don't have the avenue of being able to say, hey, I live in a high crime area, I'm going to carry a firearm to protect myself. You don't have that as an option. There is no oh, I live in a high crime area, let me go down and get my permit and then have my CCW. Like, no, that doesn't exist. Like, there is no option for a CCW. You see? So that forces people to go off and what? Ride dirty, carry firearms illegally. Then they had no intention of committing a crime. They had no intention of assaulting anybody. They had no intention of doing anything, quote unquote, illegal. Right? But all they wanted to do is protect themselves. But because of the way that the laws are in the processing, if they get caught with that firearm that they're carrying, which the state is going to say is an unlawful possession, that same government is going to throw the book at them like they're a damn bank robber. Oh, what did you get caught for? Possession. Oh, you were just carrying a firearm? Yeah, I was just carrying a firearm around. I live in a bad neighborhood. I was just carrying a firearm around. They're going to throw that person under the jail like they murdered somebody or had the intent to murder somebody, when all they were doing was protecting themselves. And the only people that really grasp and understand this are black people who live in the South, where because their state is so red, you know what I mean, they actually have the luxury of being able to exercise their Second Amendment rights outside the home. But in the Northeast, where black people love they Democrats and love the blue, we got all the gun crime in the world. You see what's going on in New York. You see what's going on in Philadelphia. Gun crime for days. And then black people, all they do is double down on, yes, we want more Democrats and more gun control laws because we got to get these guns off the streets. Like as though passing more laws is going to cause these young men to commit less crime. It's not. All it does is make it so that if one of these young boys tries to run up on you, you're up Schitt's Creek. You standing out there with nothing but your ass. I wouldn't want to have to put down a 15-year-old boy that's trying to carjack me, but better him than me. So all these laws do is create more victims in the black community. Because again, we're not just talking about, just flying over the black community and dumping, handguns out of the back of an AC-130. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about law-abiding citizens going and getting their CCW permits, going through the background check, whatever minimal training that it should be, okay? And get their permits so that they can be able to protect themselves. Because I guarantee you, a lot of these young boys will start thinking twice about carjacking somebody when, they're getting shot back at, right? As the saying goes, it ain't no fun when the rabbit has the gun. You know what I'm saying? So, this is what black people need to understand. Y'all black people always complain, all these black olders always on the news, oh, we got to get these guns off the street and all that nonsense. Not realizing these young boys are not going to, again, no economic opportunity has been created in the black community over the last 40 years. There's multiple reasons why these young boys are engaging in the criminal activities that they're engaging in. And I don't want to hear another story about some father of three who's actively involved in his life or in the life of his children getting killed because some stick-up kids ran up on him. So like I said, black people need to give this not just some serious thought. They need to act. And black people are not acting when it comes to this. Again, when you talk about all these gun control laws, they don't enforce that shit in the white community. They enforce it in the black community. So now your kids are getting all sorts of stopped and frisked and everything. The law enforcement is coming through, conflating the criminal elements in your community with just everybody. It's just this blanket one size fits all. Oh, a black male between a particular age, oh, he's got to be a criminal. And they treat him as such. As opposed to, as many other communities do, there's a distinction. The white community has its criminal elements. All you gotta do is go and watch Cops. Bad boys, bad boys. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? All you gotta do is watch Cops. There's plenty of white criminals. Yet, but yet there is the law-abiding, NRA pushing, Guns of America pushing, element in the white community that embraces the Second Amendment. Everybody knows about it. They talk about their rights all the time. And I do think that a great part of the problem, the reason why we don't, exercise our Second Amendment rights in the black community is because it's a matriarchy or gynocracy. Because we don't have patriarchal homes and we don't have fathers actively in the homes, because of this ass backwards setup in the black community, you don't have black men that look at it from the standpoint of taking pride of, this is my neighborhood, this is my community, this is my family, I'm protecting my children and my household, so there isn't that sense, of pride, you see, in all these discussions, the gender war and everything else, that's another area that needs to be tackled. Because that spills into the primary reason as to why white men, look at the Second Amendment from the angle that they look at it from, and why black men, don't. Many of us grow up with, Big Mama and, guns are bad and that's all there is to it because, women, that's just the way that women are. Women look at guns and violence like, oh, it's bad and this, that, and the third, and then complain that they live in a high crime area and that there's no man to protect them. Some of these women I look at like they want black men to be just shields. I'm like, okay, you want them to protect you with what? Because Ray Ray and Pookie out here got them Dracos. What you want him to protect you with? His fist? His hands? You see? Nothing? So there's other reasons as to why, we don't embrace the Second Amendment as we should. But you got to wrap your head around the man that you voted for wants to argue before the Supreme Court that you as a black person do not have the right to self-defense outside of the home. This is what your guy, that's your man. That's your man's. That's who you voted into office. And he's going to go up there and argue, despite the fact that you live in a high crime area and he doesn't, despite that fact, oh, well, just call the cops, right? Call the same cops that black people have been running around screaming Black Lives Matter, are the same ones violating and abusing black people on some Derek Chauvin shit. So you're going to call the cops. You don't need a gun. Call the cops. Even though we already know, how long is it going to take the cops to get there in a predominantly black environment where the cops already feel demoralized because of Black Lives Matter and all these protests and everything else? You really think that they're going to eagerly rush to get to the scene in a predominantly black community? I don't think so. So you out there on your own. So, and even with the women, rape and pillage, men sexually assault, rape and pillage, Yeah, and again, Joe Biden's about to go up there and argue that you aren't able to defend yourself to the men in the community that are violating women. Because now you can't have your CCW, you can't have your permit to protect yourself against, the toxic black male masculinity and energy and all that stuff that you want to argue. I'm not even saying that you're wrong. I want black women to protect themselves. If a man inappropriately puts his hands on you, put him in the dirt. That's what I'm saying. I'm not against that. I'm not going to go, oh, this is misandry. Like, no. I was like, what were you doing? Oh, you were trying to get into her apartment. Y'all saw the clip of the young boy trying to run into that woman's apartment. You know what I'm saying? Now, just imagine if he got in there, right? Or let's look at it. Imagine if she had a firearm on her hip and was able to protect herself. Yeah, you can run in here if you want. You won't be running out. Your ass will be in the dirt. You see? I mean, the fact of the matter is, real talk. as a community, we do have to police ourselves. We do have to recognize, just like every black person, all, as we love to say, all what is it? All skin folk ain't kinfolk. You see what I'm saying? So you got to recognize, just any other community. It's not like we're all black people are on some kumbaya shit. We got some savages out here. And the so-called good people need to protect themselves from the savages. Every community has good people and bad people. You know what I'm saying? 10% of people are always going to be good no matter what. I don't believe in firearms. I don't believe in guns. 10% of people are going to be on some savage shit. They got, antisocial behavior. They're sociopaths. They violate other people. Then you got like 80% in the middle, that can go either way, And that's where most people are. All this stuff about, I couldn't shoot anybody. Yeah, you could if your life was on the line. So I need black people to speak on it. Roly Poly Martin, he ain't gonna speak on it. Joy Reid, she ain't gonna speak on it. Simone Sanders, she ain't gonna speak on it. Mark Lamont Hill, he ain't gonna speak on it. You know what I'm saying? All the typical Negro whisperers are not gonna speak on it. You see? That this idea that, if we just all have the sweet twinkle of white Jesus in our eye, that we're going to have a better, bigger, brighter black community, that's false. That's false. We got a lot of savages in the community where, unfortunately, if they try it, put them in the dirt. It's just that simple. And hopefully, some people being put in the dirt will make them recognize, yeah, man, I need to chill. I need to all the way chill. Because the good people in the community, they're not putting up with that. You better find something else to do. Besides going out here and trying to carjack people. Besides trying to go out here trying to home invade, you better find something else to do. You see? So anyway, black people, you need to recognize your Second Amendment rights are just as invaluable to you as they are, to the white people that want to run around and, got the "Don't Tread on Me" flags and want to march on capitals and stuff like that. Your Second Amendment is just as important to you as it is to them. As a matter of fact, it should be more important given the historical context of what the system of white supremacy already tried in the past, or already did in the past. Excuse me, not tried, did. You know what I'm saying? Black people got more than one reason why the Second Amendment is important to them. So anyway, that's all I got to say. That's my video. SWP out.